where Cornelius Tacitus describes a battle in Wales where the Druids covered their altars with the blood of captives and consulted their deities through human entrails. Once again, a key thing to note here is that Romans looked at pagans as presenting a threat to their way of life. Reason being is the Druids held a certain power over their community that was under Roman control. So if you think about it, here is a group of people that don't go to war and don't pay tribute. So taxes and war. You're not going to have troops for your army because they're not going to do it, and they're not going to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. So you don't want these people just running around all willy-nilly, getting more people in and more converts and more converts. What happens is you get so many converts in something like that, that now you have a real threat of being overthrown. And the one thing Rome didn't like was competition. And that's obvious. We look at the battle between Rome and Hannibal Barca, Rome and different barbarian factions, and we see that Rome doesn't like competition. They were a certain way. They didn't want to deal with heathen gods. And that's just how it was. The reign of Augustus in 27 BC would be the actual start of the suppression of the Druids by Rome. Something else to note here is that there are virtually no historical documentation regarding the history of the Druids from pre-Christian Celts. And like we said before, so much of what is written by Rome could very well be fabricated or half-truths, because it was speculated that the Druids, they were discussed in medieval literature, but at that point they were just healers and magicians. They weren't this other class. And once again, their oral history, you only have so much you can say before it gets lost in translation. Or like playing telephone, if you get 10 people to play telephone, by the end of the telephone, the message will change. That's what I think happened, this oral history. And then when it got to somebody that would tell Rome, you don't know if that person was just saying, hey, listen, these people are crazy, they're barbaric. You don't know if that person had an agenda against the Druids, or if he wanted to put the Druids so high up in terms of barbaric actions that it would hold in the history books for all of time. That's the one thing about this that I found interesting, because when I went to actually research Druids, I was like, oh man, there's going to be at least something. There's going to be at least one or two things here that I'm going to be able to pull out and enjoy. Boy, was I wrong. There were zero things. Just what Caesar said and what some of the Celts have said.
Most of the things that we supposedly, quote unquote, know about the Druids is actually stuff that has been kind of invented over the last couple of centuries. Like, there was a big resurgence in Druidic mythology and things like that in the 18th century, and that carried up into the 19th century. And now here in the 20th century, we have all these things that are supposedly Druidic and this and that, and it's been absorbed into certain Wiccan practices and a few other things. But a lot of it just kind of, somebody made it up somewhere. Somebody was like, hey, you know what? I think this was the Druids, and that was it. Like, nobody was able to contradict them, but they didn't have any evidence, so they just said it, they kept saying it, and it stuck. And most of the things, like, going back to some of our past couple of shows, we talked about the Fae, and we talked about the Celtic deities. Supposedly the Druids were proficient in Futhark and Ogham and stuff, but they didn't leave any written records, so that's impossible, right? So, all these things that are attributed to them are really up in the air. We kind of have no idea.
Like what you heard? Well, head on over to www.spreaker.com/user/This Uncanny Earth to hear more from this episode 183, Druids, and to hear more episodes from This Uncanny Earth. As always, stay uncanny.